The GPS DairyCAST features the high-value insights of the GPS Dairy Consulting team's trusted advisors and the owners and managers from the elite dairy farms they serve. These conversations deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders.
Hello and welcome to the GPS DairyCAST. I'm Peggy Coffeen from the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, serving as your host. And on this GPS DairyCAST, we are coming to you from the 2024 GPS Leaders Forum. And I'm joined by GPS team member King Hickman, as well as Ron Oltmanns from Leadskill. He's the founder and CEO of a leadership development consulting firm. And in this conversation, King speaks with Ron about some of the ways that he has helped others to grow their leadership skills, uncover their values, and take themselves and those around them to an entirely new level. In fact, you may even find that King has benefited from Ron's skills himself. Hear all this and more today on the GPS DairyCAST.
Well, Ron, thanks for joining me on this DairyCast.
Yeah.
I think you're well aware, and so is our audience, that the brand promise of GPS Dairy Consulting is inspire change and grow leaders. Mm-hmm. And I want to focus today's conversation on growing leaders.
Yeah.
And you have a company that you work with called Leadskill.
Correct.
And why don't you give us an overview of what that is and what you do in your role, and
Sure.
we can take it from there.
So for the last 20 plus years, I've been working, helping leaders grow and also helping organizations. How do we get more people to take action and step forward in their leadership journey to become leaders and step up to the plate, so to speak? And I've consulted in different industries. Agriculture is one of those. It's pretty important and something I've really enjoyed. It's taken me many places. And the thing that I like most about working with leaders is not just doing a one-off training, but actually the ongoing kind of relationship and getting a chance to work with individuals and teams and see them grow over the years. Mm-hmm. So that's really where I specialize.
Okay. When I think of growing leaders and developing leaders, it's not just making them leaders of other people, mm-hmm. but it's making them leaders of themselves as well.
It starts with the self.
Yeah.
Like
a culture starts with the leader, and the leader has to start with their own core values, and we focus heavily on that too.
So a big part of leadership to me is, the leader, even before you have a title, even before you step into a position, you have to look at yourself in the mirror every morning. And it's like, am I the kind of person that I would want to follow, a younger version of me? And that's one of the things that I ask people to think about. So your point about self-leadership is key. And I say leadership is whenever people want to follow you, not that they have to. So it really is, to me, separate from a position or a title or that sort of thing. And so whenever people will exercise some amount of leadership, and they grow influence. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Right. How do you start helping them recognize their own leadership skills or need for leadership skills? Or
here's a picture that I have in my mind. If I have a large cow going down a chute, the last thing I want to do is try to turn that cow around and get them going in the opposite direction. So I want to see where they're going in the first place. Okay. And I think a leader is kind of the same way. Even before they see themselves as a leader, I look for what direction are they going? What are their passions? What are their values? And how can I help them step into and be more of what they already are, what God has created them to be, mm-hmm. and let that come out more fully? And so the first thing I want to do is just look at kind of the situation and see, what are we dealing with here? Because often we're too much into our stuff and we can't see ourselves objectively. And I think that's the value of like a coach or someone who steps in and walks alongside and just helps us to see things that are right there in front of us.
So you spoke of the value of a coach. So when we look at GPS, we have our dimensions of success, mm-hmm. the pyramid, which is coaching, mentoring, process, things like that. And we really try to build a coaching, mentoring type culture. And even in my earlier career, it was in a similar culture, mm-hmm. where I was encouraged to have a coach, mm-hmm. personal coach, business coach, mm-hmm. Leadership coach. And I found you. And
We go way back.
we go way back and have had a 20-some year relationship, and 10
Yeah.
of which was very, very directed coaching.
Yeah.
We encourage our consultants to have a coaching relationship if they want. We even have clients that we've brought coaches to, either a young leader in an organization or just
Right. I think that's key for our listeners to understand is if you are engaging with a GPS consultant, or if you're thinking about engaging with GPS, they are someone who is actually working with someone to help them grow as a leader.
Right.
Before they step on your farm, we're already putting them through the paces. We're asking them to ask the hard questions and to look at themselves and what do they need to do to grow. Because when you're on a farm and you're looking at an operation, change isn't easy. Change is hard. And it's scary too. And so before we can ask people to take a journey, I think we need to take that journey ourselves.
Right.
And so that's what we do with our GPS consultant. That's what you've done. And you've made that an intentional part of the culture here is like, you know what, we're going to invest in ourselves. We're going to do personal development, and we're also going to lead the way for our clients.
And sometimes that means taking someone out of their comfort zone.
Very
right?
much. Very much.
To grow, you have to stretch. You have to step out of that comfort zone and take the risk, I guess.
Growth, like I said, isn't easy, and it can be scary, can be complex. But besides all that, what I found is that growth is often we get in our own way. We have like this mental noise, or we make up stories about what's going on. And if you want to really simplify it, what you have to do is take the next step. After you've seen what is there, what's really the situation, just take the next step. Even if you end up finding that it's the wrong step or it's in the wrong direction, you can correct it. It's really hard to change course on something that's not moving. It's just like the cow, right? That's just bedded down. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
But when you're moving, you can steer it.
At least pointed in the right direction.
Well, I would think back. We were talking about this not too long ago about Ken Schulte, and also about when you were applying to another place and they kind of like passed on you and said, oh no, you're not cut out for this.
Yeah.
And I think part of what I shared with you at the time was you need to invest in yourself. You need to believe in yourself. You can do this. You don't need them.
Right.
And then that's, I think, part of the catalyst of you getting with Jim and Marty and saying, you know what? Why don't we build something that fits for us?
Yeah. So we were, as you say, step out of the comfort zone. I can think of an example. It was helping me through a career transition, number one, when I was in a corporate role with an animal health company, looking to leave that role and step into some sort of independent consulting. And as I was exploring different places of employment, one potential company had me take a test, if you remember. And they came back with the results that, we're going to pass because, we just don't think you're going to be successful in this nutrition role.
Best thing they could have done.
Yeah. So
It felt crummy at the time, like a
felt
kick
terrible.
in the teeth.
It's like I had made the plans that's what I was going to do, and then somebody told me I can't do it, and suddenly I'm out of my comfort zone, and you had some great coaching there around moving through that. Just get through it. Look internal, don't worry about what they say.
Right.
Worry about what you want to do and how it fits.
Right.
And that's what I did. Yeah. But that was the beginnings then of GPS Dairy Consulting in a way, because it's like, I'm not going to tell somebody else they can't do it. If they come to me and they want to do it, I would rather help them be successful at it. So that's the conversations that Jim Barmore and I would have as we rode together.
Right.
It's like, can we form a company that provides a safe place for people who want to be independent dairy consultants to come out and do
Right.
that? And that was the beginning of that culture, that coaching, mentoring, leadership development type culture that we wanted to develop.
And I have a lot of admiration for what you guys have done over the years, with even at times like you identify mutually. It's like, they're not going to be the most successful they can be working within GPS.
Right.
So they should go somewhere else, and they come to the conclusion, I'm going to be happier somewhere else, and that's fine. And then the people who want to make this what they do long term, that
Right.
they're really part of this. They're
Yeah.
part of the vision. So I think that's, again, in this industry, you don't have people who do it as a hobby. It's got to be something that you're
Right.
passionate about, because it's a tough field. But you want to see where the grit is, right?
The grit, right? We do talk about grit a lot when we're talking about ourselves, our clients. Grit is our core values: growth, respect, integrity, innovation, teamwork.
Yes.
That's grit. That's how we talk about grit.
And besides you guys using that as your internal core values, there's a fair body of research. Angela Duckworth at Penn State has actually done this on grit, about just in the world of work. I mean, she did it with West Point folks and others. It's the notion that you stick with things, and those who have perseverance can definitely overcome any deficit of knowledge or talent or some of those
Right.
things. And I think this is what we overlook. And I think what some of our listeners could probably really identify with is like, don't tell me I can't do it, or don't tell me I'm not cut out for this, right? Because grit can actually get you a long way in life,
Yep.
right?
Grit is what gets you through the zone of non-comfort. To say
Exactly.
it in a different way.
Exactly.
That when you're out of your comfort zone, it's the grit that helps you get through it.
I would like to hire people who have grit over people who have talent. Sometimes the talented folks there's an ego, or there's an unwillingness to do the hard things. But if someone has grit, they're going to stick with it. And maybe there's a message in there also for dairy producers, and especially in a tight labor market. It's like, if I were betting on people, I would look for those who have these sort of things: grit, coachability, they're willing to learn, they're willing to get out of their comfort zone. They have a let's try it sort of mentality versus a nah, it can't be done.
Right.
Haven't you guys found that that's the most successful client profile?
Absolutely.
Make your feed center a profit center. Feed Fit is an innovative, module-based, and collaborative initiative from GPS Dairy Consulting, which provides the framework and resources to understand the financials, trace the inventories, and track the KPIs of your feed center. By implementing the expertise of your GPS consultant, modules are strategically executed with the goal of continual improvement in the efficiency of your feed center. Take the science of nutrition to the reality of milk in the tank with Feed Fit. To learn more, ask your GPS Dairy consultant or look under the Education tab at gpsdairy.com.
So as we talk about grit as it relates to the GPS core values, that's something that we take not just as a corporate culture, but we start to look at our own values. And it's something that through the years you helped me do, is identify what those values were and how to bounce things off those.
Yes.
And I think that was a key point in my leadership development, was to connect with those things. So if we would talk about a client or a consultant, have that conversation with me like you would with a client.
To me, I'm going to put values within the framework of motivation. A lot of people think of motivation in almost what I call emotional terms. Like, motivation is whenever I feel inspired. And this is GPS, you say inspired change. It's great. But when we talk about my personal motivation, you know what? There's some days I don't feel like it. There's some days I just don't want to get up in the morning. I don't want to go. And like on a dairy farm, there's no way that's going to fly, right? You do things regardless whether you feel like it.
Yep.
And to me, this is like part of motivation. And that speaks to like values. Values will see us through the time when, on a behavioral level, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to take action. But if you've got values, if you've got that core, that's what sees you through. And so I ask leaders to take time really looking within and diving deep into, what are my core values? What do I care about? What's my own story? Like, where did it all start for me? Most of us have some focal experiences when we were young that just stand out to us. Whether it was like people who believed in us, maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a teacher, mentor, a coach, something like that. Or we had some life experience that just really marked us. That's when some of our values started being formed. And so if you go back to that, there's a lot of energy that we can tap in that if we uncover what our values are. And that's what I asked you to look at is, what are your values, King? And you've gone through this exercise. I find that it gets richer and deeper over time, the more that you look at your values and articulate them.
Right.
And especially if you find work that lines up with your values, so that it's not like you're having to play out of what I call two playbooks.
Right.
If you just are working out of one playbook, like my values and my work line up, then you've got a lot of energy that you can work with there, a lot of satisfaction.
Right. And let me give you an example of one of those values that I identified during that time as we looked at where I live. We moved back to our hometown because one of the values that my wife and I, Keisha, had was we wanted to raise our kids around grandparents. That was one. That's a value. And you know, when we talk about values, we're not talking moral values. We're talking what are those things that you operate from? Yeah.
The things I truly care about.
Yeah.
The things that matter to me.
And that was one of the things. So when I was through the corporate world and I had opportunities to move, to take a promotion or another role,
Right.
it came back to that value. It's like, no, this is what we value, being right here, and that's where we're going to stay. And as I was going through that, I think this is great. You had me read a book called Acres of Diamonds, and it had a huge impact on me. And I think if you could go through a little bit about how that could help who's ever listening. It's a great book, and it takes 30 minutes to read.
And you can get a free copy online or from anywhere. It's just Google it. Look up Russell Conwell, Acres of Diamonds. And he told this story back in the day, early 1900s, many times. The gist of the story is this guy really went on this quest, this search around the world looking for this legendary diamond that he was just got it in his head and was so enamored with it, and searched high and low, and lo and behold, found that there was no diamond to be had, right?
And he sold his own acreage to have the means to be able to go on this quest, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a good story if he hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Only to find that on his land that he'd sold, in his own backyard, there were acres of diamonds, literally. And he had never thought to dig in his own backyard and to excavate there. And it's kind of a fable or a metaphor for what so much of us do is we overlook the treasure, the gold that's right in our own backyard, or if you would say, right under the hood. It's right under our nose. And I say that it's like our values. Our values are where we have a lot of, like I said, energy, a lot of motivation. It's where we're going to find our true North Star kind of lining up. And when we're chasing after this kind of dream of the diamond that's somewhere out there, it's really someone else's dream that we're going after. If we can mine the acres of diamonds in our own backyard, man, we're going to be so much happier. We're going to really find our ultimate satisfaction.
And if you're not in touch with your own values, can you truly be an effective leader for someone else?
I've not found that to be true,
Right.
So far. I have found people who are living off of what I call borrowed values. And it reaches a point where it becomes untenable. It's something where it's like, I'm just not satisfied. I've done this, Ron, I've done that. So I've tried all these things that I thought were going to bring me success. I've got the house, and I've got the vacations, I've got the lifestyle, the title, all these things, and none of it makes me happy. And I said, are you ready to start living your own dream versus someone else's? Because it's going to go back to those values, like what you did of saying, I'm going to go counter to what other people have said I ought to be valuing. I'm going to value me. And that even brings up, I don't want to be too personal here, but some of the things that we've discussed recently about for the future, it reaches a point with GPS where it's like, I want to hand this to the next generation. I want other folks to be successful. I want to see this dream live and go broader. And there's still things that I want to do
Yeah.
in my life, right?
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, to be that effective leader, right, there has to be a level of sincerity and transparency and consistency that if you're not in touch with who you are, if you're trying to be someone else, you'll never be consistent. It'll be different every time. And
Yeah.
so that as we try to grow leaders, it's like, let's get in touch with those. What do you value? What do you want this dairy to be? What do you want your career to be? Get in touch with those things.
How can this operation be a vehicle? How can it be something that allows me to express my vision of a better world and pass it on to others so that the dream will go on? It can live,
Yeah.
and it's not going to die with me. It's going to pass. And that's not always going to look the way I expected it. That's another important thing that leaders come up against is what I thought how this was going to play out and the way it's actually gone. Wow, the road has had a lot of twists and turns, right?
Right,
It doesn't
yeah.
look the way that you necessarily expected. But at the end of the day, I think the goal is you can say, I know who I am, I know what my values are, and this is the life that I want. This is the world that I want, right?
And I know where I've been and how it's gotten me here,
Yeah.
right? You can only connect the dots looking back. You can't connect the dots looking forward.
That's kind
But
of a
you
fool's
do-
errand, right? We're trying to-
Yeah, but we do need to think about the future and what we want for
Sure.
it. You have to plan for it. But
It's
a lot
not the
of times
plan.
the dots don't connect until you look back.
They
It's like,
don't.
that's how I got here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, our stories make sense when we tell them looking back, and we can see, oh, there was something operating in all of this and the
Exactly.
adversity and the things that like you were talking about, that company that passed on you, not just passed on you, but actually said, no, you're not cut out for this. But it shook you, it got your attention, and look what it did. It's launched something
Right.
even better. It would have been a disservice if they had hired
Yeah,
you,
right.
because GPS wouldn't exist, not in the form that it has.
Yeah.
So,
well, great, Ron. Thanks for spending this time with us. I hope our listeners are intrigued enough to maybe ask their GPS consultant more about leadership development and how they can maybe work with a coach themselves. Maybe it'll inspire some of our consultants to seek out coaching as well. But
awesome.
inspire change and grow leaders. That's what it's about.
Thanks for jumping on with us today to the GPS DairyCAST. I'm your GPS DairyCAST host, Peggy Coffeen from the Uplevel Dairy Podcast, and thanks for listening.
The GPS DairyCAST features conversations that deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders. If this GPS DairyCAST has you looking for more ways to become an elite dairy producer, find more information in our show notes on how you can add a GPS advisor to your team.